Okay, welcome everyone. I think we should go ahead and start. In the interest of time, I'll let people in as we go. My name is Sarah Labar. I'm the Executive Director and Curator for Artwork Center for Contemporary Art in Loveland, Colorado. We are a nonprofit gallery and studio space. So we have 30 studio spaces for artists that are subsidized and 2 gallery spaces. I am so excited to be co-hosting this event with Beth Franklin's Colorado Poetry Center, which is also a nonprofit. And we rely so much on community support. So if you do happen to go to our website and make a donation, we so appreciate that. Look at that, ask out of the way right at the top. Sorry, admitting more people here. For this event, I'm so thrilled to be doing this. This is going to be so much fun. If you could keep your video on, that's fine, but keep your audio off. So if you could keep yourself muted for the event, that would be great. We will have a Q&A at the end. And so you can use the chat function. There's, if you hover over your screen, you'll see a little chat icon and you can click on that and send your questions in throughout the event. That's fine. And I'll read them off at the end. With that, I'd like to introduce Jane Burke, who is the guest juror and curator for the exhibition Colorado Asians, which is up through May 29th. And Jane, I'll pass it off to you. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. This is really exciting. As Sarah said, we're so happy that this exhibition has a life beyond just visual art, that we are incorporating poets, especially in honor of AAPI Heritage Month, which is this month, which is really the impetus of this exhibition. Sarah approached me to do an exhibition around Asian Americans to coincide with the month of May. And so the result has been this exhibition called Colorado Asians, which again is physically at Artworks, which is in Loveland, Colorado. So really I think the thesis of the exhibition in a nutshell is, wanting to bring more visibility to Asian American artists locally and to sort of, operate as a community building network for each other and also for the public, obviously, to share and for people to have more awareness of how many Asian Americans there are in Colorado. And so it's really great to also see that we have a thriving poetry community on top of a visual arts community. And so I want to thank Beth Franklin, who again spearheaded this collaboration between Artworks and the Colorado Poet Center. She and her husband, Bob King, started the Colorado Poet Center in 2003, and then Beth began the nonprofit in 2018. So many of the poets that you'll see today have bios on the Colorado Poet Center, so you can look up more information. I'm going to get to it because we have really accomplished poets whose bios are extensive, and so I don't want to compete with taking too much time away from their poetry, but I do want to be able to introduce each one of them and tell you a little bit about their background. And today we're going to start with Jeffrey Ethan Lee. And because there's so many books and awards, I'm going to just read from my notes. Jeffrey Ethan Lee's novel, The Autobiography of Somebody Else, was published by White Pine Press in 2016. His poetry book, Identity Papers, was a 2006 Colorado Book Award finalist, and his first poetry book, Invisible Sister, in 2004, was praised in an American Book Review. Towards Euphoria was co-winner of the Editor's Poetry Chapbook Prize from Seven Kitchens Press in 2012. He won the 2002 So's Ear Poetry Chapbook Prize for The Self, and the chapbook Color Schemes was a finalist for Moonstone's first Poetry Chapbook Prize in 2015. He has taught creative writing at Mulberg College, Temple University, Westchester University, University of Northern Colorado. He currently teaches creative writing workshops semi-regularly through the Shambhala Center of Philadelphia, and he teaches the Intellectual Heritage Program at Temple University. Please help me welcome Jeffrey Ethan Lee.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, this is a real honor and a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Beth, Jane, and Sarah, and it's really great to see some old friends, Naomi, Deborah, Veronica, and Dave. So I'm going to read 4 poems, and I'm afraid I have to go really quickly because I have to get to a wedding this afternoon, and traffic is insane today, everywhere. So this first poem is called The Screen Commandments, and the subtitle is What the Screen Spoke Straight into the Minds of the People. Quote, I am the screen, your God, who led you out of reading and freed you from the depths of thought. You shall have no other gods to set above me, against me, or worse yet, in front of me. You shall make no art to worship, not of the earth, the sky, or the deep undersea, because I, your screen, am a jealous God. Worship only what streams through me, or I'll sue your children for 3 or 4 generations for rejecting me, but I'll love, favor, and give free discounts to 1,000 of your generations if you keep bowing your heads to me. You shall not misuse my name, or I'll sue you for brand infringements. You shall not work each 7th day, for the screen blessed it for all day shopping and free cat videos. Honor my parents, PC and Mac, and your lifespans will outspan those of my huge grandparents' TV and theaters. You shall kill as many live game players as you like through me. You shall adulterate as many sex partners as you want through me. You shall pirate as much content as you can steal through me. You shall troll and tell trumperies about as many people as you cannot stand through me. You shall think continually of those who have a truly great house, spouse, job, car, and so on, and covered everything through me. End quote. Terrified, the people saw red lasers flash, scanning everyone for their wage slave price tags, and hashish mountains trumpeted retro pop. And there the people saw Sesmo, their prophet, with a haystack hairdo and a withered orange face. Trembling at a distance, the people pled, Sesmo, we'll believe everything you say, but keep the true voice of the screen out of our minds or we'll die. Then Sesmo said, don't be afraid. This was just a test of the compulsory mind casting algorithm. You'll love it. No, really, you'll have to. Then he descended an escalator into the darkness of a screen like a sea. And this next one is called A Car Crash as a series of awakenings. The moment you see a blue car blurring through a red light, crossing too close, too fast, before you, no matter how hard you brake, nothing can stop the skidding moment, hoping to not die or kill, which reminds you, you could die and others too now. The moment compresses, the Chevy's rear panel, passenger side, and your front collide in that metallic yet dulled crash noise only cars make. Tires screeching, torturing the moment of churning, wrenching time. Time itself slows before you can feel what you just felt. It stops. Fearing this moment, you feel yourself to see if you're hurt. Your longest breath goes out tenderly, hoping nothing hurts. Then, in a moment, outside your car, somehow heaving, but at rest. It's fine, but for a quarter-inch dent on its fender, and you're stunned into awe. But it's no miracle. It's just momentum from a 5,300-pound Fleetwood Brim Cadillac against a small, broad-sided sedan. Then there's the moment you see the Chevy's right rear panel bashed in deeply, but its left rear side is utterly imploded. And next to the wreck, in a moment that you can't yet fully grasp, you see a townhouse with its concrete stairway suddenly gone. It's rubble, meaning that a secondary crash had smashed the stairway away in a moment. The concrete was hollow. Suddenly, you panic for the driver and her passenger, too. They're stunned, still not moving for moments until they groggily raise their heads like beaten prisoners awakening. And you realize that your skid marks, long circling spirals, mean that you did a post-impact clockwise 360 and you somehow missed that moment. The fog inside you burns clear. There's a sunny playground full of little kids across the street who saw everything. They're gathering by the playground's edge, and now they're joyously shouting, "Do it again, do it again, do it again, mister. Do it again, do it again, do it again, mister." And this is a really short poem called Sunrise Bike Ride East of Greeley, Colorado. The moon commas over the dusk, a chalk smudge on glimmering slate, a few stars faintly asterisk the dark west horizon, goats quotation mark in their mud yard. To them I just apostrophe. Ponies gallop toward me, their eyes escape into wonder. A snake crushed flat as jerky makes an "oh" in shimmering skin italic. A mule grazes, backslashing under loose wire fencing, tasting the rain green grass. And this is the last one, The Thin Blue Thread of Light. This is about the day my son was born. The instant he cried in the dark, I rose from the deep vinyl chair without sleep, suspended by a thin blue thread of light, without thought, holding up my head, walking to his tiny crib, lit only by night lights gleaming off tiles, without effort, submitting to his cry that rose like another thin blue thread hanging from the sky. Without knowing how, I'd know to hold him, my heart tender, to pacify change and bundle him, surprised to feel the ovular indentation encircling his head. He'd been stuck so hard, his skull now had a dent band. She was still sleeping, stitched up, unable to rise, unaided. I'd shown her the baby in the OR, said, "He's okay." I'd winced, watching the surgeon stitching the transverse where her scar would be. But she said, "It doesn't hurt. Cradling him on my arm, I paced so slowly his breathing grew even in the near silence, in the semi-dark, and I set him down deep in sleep. Sinking into the stiff, stuffed chair, I was so happy because of him. A smile lifted every depleted cell of me, and I was happy because of this thin blue thread of light that was always within us, and that out of pain brings joy.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Those were fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Yes. Do you have a website or somewhere people can contact you?
Uh, um, Actually, they could just write to jeffreyethanlee@gmail.com.
Great.
That'd be the easiest way and the best way
Okay.
to get a hold of
If
me.
anyone has follow-up
work-
questions.
there's a work email at Temple University. You can find me there too. But yeah, jeffreyethanlee, one word, @gmail.com
Okay.
is the easiest.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
We'll let you get to your wedding, but thank you for making the time today.
Yeah, so long.
Next up, we have, I believe, another Colorado expat who's coming back to Colorado, it looks like, by her bio, but Serena Chopra is here today, and we're so pleased. I'm excited to read her lengthy bio. It's very impressive. Serena Chopra is a teacher, writer, dancer, filmmaker, soundscape designer, and visual and performance artist. She has a PhD in creative writing from the University of Denver, an MFA from the University of Colorado at Boulder, and was a Kundiman Fellow, a Redline resident, and a Fulbright Scholar, and has received a month-long artist residency at Understudy Denver for September 21. So she's coming back. She has 2 books, This Human and Ick, am I saying that right? As well as 2 films, Dogana Chapti and Mother Ghosting, both from 2018. She's an 8-year company member with Evolving Doors Dance and was a featured artist in Harper's Bazaar India, as well as in the Denver Westward's 100 Colorado Creatives. She has recent publications in Sync, Foglifter, Matters of Feminist Practice, and the anthology Alone Together, Love, Grief, and Comfort in the Time of COVID-19. In October 2020, Serena co-directed No Place to Go, an artist-made haunted house with Kate Spear and Frankie Toon. Serena is assistant professor of creative writing at Seattle University. You can find out more at serenachopra.com. Serena, take it away.
Thank you so much for reading that, Jane. It was perfect. And thanks so much, Beth, for organizing, and Sarah as well. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm really excited to share some work. Before I do, I just want to acknowledge the ongoing COVID crisis in India. If you have the resources to donate, there are some links I've just put in the chat. It's quite bad there. We have lots of family there. I have lots of friends in the queer community in Bangalore, of which we've already lost 2 due to COVID in the last 2 weeks. So it's pretty dire. So if you have the resources, here are some really great places to donate. Today I'm going to be reading from a manuscript I've been working on called Dayavati of Mercy. Dayavati is the name of my grandmother, and her name translates to of mercy, or merciful, having mercy. This manuscript traces sort of a family, it's a family history that begins in Patiala, Punjab, where my grandmother is married to my grandfather at the age of 14. She marries into a home that is not kind to her. She is abused, beaten with ropes until the point of deafness. Her firstborn son is taken from her. She tries to escape to her father a number of times, and he sends her back, claiming that she is the property of the family that she moved into and they can do what they want with her. She's tried to kill herself 3 times by drowning in the Tapti River. My grandfather, her husband, had undiagnosed bipolar disorder and was quite violent in the home. These are violences and scenes that my father also witnessed. So then the manuscript moves from sort of recounting my grandmother's life to thinking about what it's like to be a child witnessing these things. The book then traces my father's immigration in the late 70s to America, to Colorado in particular, to the Great Plains. So my father also grew up in India, in Maharashtra, which is a prairie, a large prairie. And then so the book kind of thinks about the prairie in India and the prairie here in Colorado. I grew up in Aurora. And also thinks about, it takes an autobiographical turn at the very end. You know, in my household, my father and I had a lot of tension that sometimes also got violent. So thinking about what is it to love and nurture and be in relationship with a parent, even though they've caused trauma. And my father himself also cared for his father at the end of his life. My grandfather lived with us. So the end of the book is thinking about how do we find place to care and love despite having past trauma. So that's a little bit about the book as a whole. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you first the book is written, but it also has a series of short films in it. So I'm going to be opening up with a short film that talks about the etymology of my grandmother's name, Dayavati, meaning of mercy. And then I will read a bit from the sequence as well. All right. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. And Beth, if you could just give me a thumbs up to let me know that it works. You should be hearing sound, great, and also seeing image move. Let me go to full screen. All right, enjoy. It's only 2 minutes. You can come.
Dayavati, full of mercy. Daya does not ignore the tragedies of the world. Daya confronts tragedy, uses one's means to drown suffering, offers breath, compassion, sympathy, kindness, mercy. Daya suffers an empathy with, having pity on, breathlessness, becomes herself breathless, suffers suffering in the suffering of all others. Daya observes alien pain. Daya moves with affection toward the sufferer to act mercifully with kindness and forgiveness. Daya observes alien pain, ropes, fire, addiction, madness. Daya moves patiently, asthmatic, with affection, lactating, shoeless, breathless, toward the sufferer, begging, Daya, 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 to the river, to act mercifully, to drown this suffering with kindness and forgiveness, forging breath for giving, forgiving breath, breathlessly, rather than causing others death, one imbued with Daya, Daya chooses herself to die.
All right, and now I'll read from the sequence. Seduction after nocturnal prey. Flat, flat land, dust in our eyes, staring at the lust of the mountains, Western interrogation of our flatness, staring at the sun, staring at the black leaning at our windows. To make inside that blackness $1 million, a woman of cosmopolitan seduction, to whom I give my girlhood nickname and leave red kiss on the threat of night. And to myself, a stolen state of calm, the icy purple lips of a too early crocus. I always begin with the moon in each spiral. I know that leaning here as I am in the lap of a lap dance, I withstand a lineage, suffer some sort of guilty comfort. Is it labor turns a girl into woman? Is it the thought of distant seasons? I first knew of broke women with yet another dead engine before I knew what it meant for her kept in perpetual dowry. Does this violence embarrass you? Excess is a shadow suffered. When what wins over the eye like velvet instigation, the cool night tripping over crickets. But we are still the immigrants who made it. Quiet home, fences. When coming home at 4 a.m. to a dead bird in the kitchen, blood like a snapped seam of sequins, feathers, and the cat already sleeping. Guilt, what nest have you made in my throat, feeding from the winter keep of my heart? In 1934, Dayavati turned 14 and was wed to Anand Sagar Chopra. To have one's name and to have it taken. Sas means mother-in-law. Dahej, dowry. Rasi, rope. For example, Dahej rasi ki tara bandata hai. Dowry binds like rope. Or Sas ni rasi si Dayavati komara. Mother-in-law hit Dayavati with rope. Or Ne rasi se Dayavati. Mercy for the rope. Alien pain moves toward the knot breaking the drum. Deafness, the laws of the mothers of sons procuring daughters to take one's name. Malavi Devi and Dayavati Chopra. Meri Dadi, my grandmothers. Mothers of fathers and of fathers of fathers, as they say, who ties the knot keeps the firstborn son. I open you in my hand on the floor and am counting with you the retreating steps, the sweetness of burnt onion, garlic on fingertips to remind you your agility with a blade, with slick skin. The knotted rope against your ears, your deafness, the inexplicable diagnosis of mine, our legs braided with muscle bend like baskets, the intimacy of resting on your own strength, the love you whisper between your breasts. I must believe these were your rituals too. I must believe the silence left you no forgiveness, and the tinnitus in my ears is the strain of your crisis, swallowed and packed neatly in your jaws. What does mercy forge? The debts are locally known. Obedience consumes the nerves, alive with after image. Unearth what survives survival. The body ingrown with what conditions? Castrations. One good ear needing the other's silence. The prairie hands me a love for time under vacancy. Darkness caught in the seam between her lips. I dance the night into shifts of rivulets, wrinkled desert wind. Daya relay the ways nerve dries into bone, where disorder is something disappearing you from the inside. Slow black happiness, keenest fossil of her gesturing heat, her final thirst, throttles my leaky expenses. Men come from, for their mothers and go. I take a fistful of pomegranate to the mouth. The poem is a stage on which the wound swerves. Watch, the edge is on fire, and I burn only to survive it. Thank you all so much.
I have to shake off the chills, Serena. That was incredible. Thank you so much. Woo. Excuse me. Our next poet is Sandy Tseng. We're so pleased to have you as well. Sandy Tseng's book of poems, Sediment, was published by Four-Way Books in October 2009. Among her awards are the nation's 2006 Discovery Award and scholarships from Breadloaf Writers Conference and the Vera I. Hines Foundation. She has held residencies from the MacDowell Colony and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. Her work has appeared in Crab Orchard Review, Crazy Horse, Fugue, Hunger Mountain, The Nation, Third Coast, and other journals. Her poems were recently anthologized in Yellow as Turmeric, Fragrant as Cloves by Deep Bowl Press in 2008. She currently resides in Seattle, Washington as well. Please welcome Sandy Tseng.
Jane, thanks so much for that introduction. And thank you to Beth and Sarah as well for co-hosting this event. I found several of the pieces in the Colorado Asians art exhibit so moving. I was surprised by how much I connected with it, and I wish I could see it in person. The poems that I'm choosing to read today are the ones that I felt resonated with the pieces in the exhibit, especially FOB Arrived and Tide Duck. This is Songs of Barnacles. In between languages, our voices gathered in the skies. We are tendered from the island in vessels that fare poorly in high wind. Night becomes day, and day becomes night. We are separated by opposite ends of the day. For each new word, we lose one from the past. Our past rings in our ears. We discover the context in which certain authors are referenced. At the end of the novel, we expect to hear the hum of a sunken plane. We expect that a heavy book answers everything. Its scent of leather and binding, its whisper of thin pages. It's not about what happens, but what we want to happen. Secretly, we've been envying the author for her story, how our parents become strangers and we lose the brother who doesn't follow tradition. We try to make sense of it all. We begin with paper cranes and move on to the modular, color layered over color. From the first generation. The name I gave myself was altered by my parents' accent. The neighbors showed us how to spell it on a yellow notepad. Our first Thanksgiving, we cringed at the stuffed bird open and gaping on the table. We drank large glasses of milk every day. Our bones grew slender and long, the height of a people increasing as our feet touched the land. I have heard my mother come home late in the evening. Some days I could not wear the $40 sweater I begged her to buy. There was a boy whose family hid in caves during the war, a man who can still taste the sea rations he ate with a soldier. We can never go back. I've wanted to pack everything into a box, ship it back overseas with a note explaining. The juxtaposition of Sue Kaiden Cho's Skin 1 and Skin 3 really speak to me about social class in many Asian cultures, and the texture of these pieces kind of reminds me of what a sweet potato vendor in Beijing once told me when I asked her how she knew I was a foreigner. She said that my skin was dark like the working class, but it wasn't weathered by the Mongolian dust. So she assumed I was a foreigner. And this poem is called The Merchants Have Said It. In the courtyard, laundry dries in the aroma of fried fish with a bit of garlic from someone's fingers. I hear the voices from the alley. The merchants have said it. I am too tall because somewhere I drank milk as a child and somewhere my face was not weathered by Mongolian dust blowing from the north. I hear the whispers through the bedsheet curtains. The way I hold my head gives me away. Although I cut my hair and buy clothes off the street, still I walk like a foreigner. My stride is too long, too quick. But if I hide my fingernails and slouch, if I look no one in the eye, someone will take the offered coins without a word. So many people have lost a loved one over the past year without having the opportunity to say goodbye. And I myself lost an uncle to pancreatic cancer recently, and not only missed out on saying goodbye to him, but I could not be present to support my cousins. And it's just a terrible weight to have to carry. This lack of closure, though, was not a new experience for me. Those of us with loved ones overseas have not always been able to make the trip for these types of circumstances. One thing that's helped me get through this kind of loss is something that my mother has told me in the past. She said, the most important thing is that you spent time with them when they were healthy and alive. So the next two poems were written under this type of scenario. The first about having that time with someone, and the second about not being present at the end. Floodwaters. The fog will not lift from the city, the damp air. In the spring, rain replenishes the drinking water. The impatiens and basil are weighted down by rainfall. We can only take so much, and the rest is history. We lived apart for so long, our words are floodwaters that cannot be absorbed, so that you will think of me when I am gone. I pull a bloom from the jasmine and drop it into your teacup. A typhoon is coming that will skim the coast and head for mainland. Years ago, there were photographs that could not be saved. You kept what you could of the remains. Now that I have finally returned, I cannot bear the mosquitoes, the clotheslines, the bottled water. Even the frogs sing in another language, but nothing about the island is true from the way we represent it. You explain these things as you brush my hair with an ivory comb, and I listen as a woman with only a child's words. It's been 15 years, and when I speak, you are still finishing my sentences without saying goodbye. When you decide you're leaving, I am hours away across the Pacific, nursing a daughter who was born weeks too early. Her small mouth can barely grasp me, and she sleeps hours beyond what she is allowed. I feed her every 2 hours, although she is heavy with sleep. I know you prefer sleep too, even as they try to wake you. My cousin rubs her cheek, your cheek and hand, holding the phone close while I call to you in my best little girl voice, the one you would recognize across Daimaru. Ama, Ama. Your eyes flicker open and close again in your sleep. Your sleep takes you further and further from my voice, and I imagine that your fingers are around mine for a while, lingering for days as I listen to the fall and rise of your breath, and the oil collects in your hair as your skin grows more transparent before you leave abruptly, without telling me, without saying goodbye, the way children do sometimes, and how they're playing right in front of me one moment, so immersed in their play, and the next minute they're gone. I'm going to close with a pantoum. And this pantoum was part of the 2009 collection, but today I'm reading it for people who have lost a loved one during the pandemic. It's called Last We Saw. It was the last we saw of each other, and we didn't know it. It was beautiful not to say goodbye. The dust just rose from the road, and we didn't know it. Your letter was still in the mail. The dust just rose from the road. We never encountered sorrow. Your letter was still in the mail. When everything burned in the fire, we never encountered sorrow. Only the words we never spoke. When everything burned in the fire, you didn't want me to look for you. Only the words we never spoke. With the moon rising in the west, you didn't want me to look for you. It was beautiful not to say goodbye. With the moon rising in the west, it was the last we saw of each other. Thank you so much.
Again, I don't think I'll get rid of my chills. Just keep coming. That was so incredible, Sandy, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to look at the exhibition and sort of intertwine your poems with some of the artwork involved. I really feel like there was a lot of overlap, and especially was touched by your poems in China. I can relate. Next up, we have a local poet, Katarina Jang. So pleased to have her here with us today. Katarina is a Filipino-Taiwanese American poet, activist, and creative entrepreneur. She's the co-founder of Slanted, a storytelling collective that cultivates the community Asian Americans want, need, and deserve. She is also the co-founder of Spectacle, Colorado's leading inclusive content marketing agency. Katarina's poetry unearths the wisdom, divinity, and freedom that lives within us all. Her work has been featured in People, CBS News, Talks at Google, TEDx, HuffPost, and more. Please welcome Katarina Jang.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your presence, everyone here today. I am so honored to be here among so many esteemed artists. I feel very new to the poetry world. I think poetry has never felt foreign because I think so much of poetry is just being present and being honest and being observant and speaking your truth. But I did start writing poetry about 1.5 years ago after a pretty traumatic breakup with a partner who I'd been with for 9 years. And actually shout out to Meta, who was one of the first people I reached out to. And I was like, I've been writing poetry, like, what do I do about it? And he was like, just try and write 1 poem a week. I didn't stick to that, but I have been writing, and it has just been such an incredible way to move through this world, especially at a time when we're dealing with kind of like a world reckoning, like a racial awakening, an environmental awakening, just everything about our world is shifting. And so it's been such an incredible tool. So thank you for having me here today. The first poem I'm going to read is an exploration of what home means to me, and realizing as, you know, a first generation person who has moved all across the country. My dad is from Taiwan, my mom's from the Philippines. Home has never really been a place. I've never felt an emotional connection to a location, but it really has been with the people who support me through my life. So this is called Home Has Never Been a Place. Leaf through my pages, dwell in my nests, but be forewarned. Oasis was never found on a map. Outsider in origin finds refuge in invisible cities. Portable family, comfort constructed, safety in the in-between. Won't you come with? Long Island held divorce in its sprawling homes, empty wings, reluctant basins of grief. School, a kennel club of ivory that bleached the beauty of color. I didn't understand back then why son me, whose yellow rivaled mine, stopped seeing me. Sun Mi, who taught me the game of kongi, rainbow plastic in the air. Sun Mi, whose house I rode to during dusk that turned trees black and white. Sun Mi, whose mother cackled as I opened the fridge of exiled kimchi and exhaled, that smells good. For 4 summers, I lived in a snow globe, though Ithaca didn't need shaking to show. A torrent of tests, informational deluge, blurred lines, gulps of booze, where sisterhood said, cut that bitch, strawberries begged to be picked. A city of falls frozen with memory I have grown too worthy to relive. I learned from Ma in New York, metropolis of oars, salt-soaked skin or cheek-numbing wind, towards the Bronx or Queens. You were either family or stranger. Glitter in concrete shimmered when she steeped rice water, ginger, sinigang seasoning. Boil first what takes longest to soften. Pork ribs cut up because a little fat is good. Add tomato, onion, white radish in chunks. Sitao, finger length, fleshy fish head last. Simmer patiently, stir and stir. Favor flavor over measuredness, staples over opulence. You will know it's done when everything is tender. All you need to do is taste. Okay, and my second poem is called Morning After. It's spelled Mourning. And I wrote it the morning after the Atlanta incident where 8 people were murdered by a gunman, 6 of whom were Asian women. And this is a poem that just came tumbling out of me, came through me from spirit in 30 minutes and barely had to do any editing after. And so it really was such a process of putting down what I was feeling into paper and then being in community with other people who read the poem and said, I was feeling all this and didn't know how to express it. And so I hope for the Asian folks in the room, it can give you some of that release. And then for our allies who are here in the room today, giving you a sense of how the trauma has felt like over the past couple of months as we've been experiencing a rise in anti-Asian violence. So this is called Morning After. Normally, I get a gentle greeting, sticky sap and spotting coaxing me to rest. But the morning after the Atlanta gunman murdered my sisters, my cycle came early. Bright, viscous blood painted the toilet bowl with a furious vengeance, thick grief of ancestral ache layered onto my womb over centuries. The morning after, the media seized my friends. The same institution who shield stories of whiteness invaded our sacred space to hurry mourning. How dare they ask us to process our pain for them? How dare they demand help with work they should have been doing over lifetimes? The morning after, my ex texted me, the one I closed the door on because Asian women were telling me things he was saying to Asian women. I was furious. At the invitation to find comfort in him, I was furious. At the rich man I slept with who came twice and left me empty, who smiled as he told me he took an Asian woman's virginity once. I can feel my inside slide out of me, and all I can do is listen to my womb, terrorized with rage, bleeding out the morning after they did, without warning, knowing the sameness of our blood. Whew. Thank you. And my last poem here is kind of a seasonal poem and reflects what I've been feeling in this season of my life and in this springtime. As Jane mentioned, I have 2 businesses and I've spent the last couple of years grinding pretty hard. And after COVID, I'm just done with that. I'm like ready to pass the torch, bring people on to do some of the things that I was doing and really spend more time with my art and my creative expression and doing the things that truly bring me joy. And so this is what that poem reflects. It's called In Bloom. There is a spring becoming inside me, and I want to fall in love with every blossom, some budding into words I hope hang in heaven, others sprouting green abundance, each growing in its own time, fragments that compose a magnificent garden. I am dizzy for a man who says thank you when I kiss his neck, fevered with text twirling and pages scrawled with half-baked, bumblebees sprinkling into divine sticky centers of each flower to flower when I buried my lists, out-bloomed measures, new ways to deem a day worthy. What am I watering? How to tend to a whole garden flowering, and amidst the frenzy, knowing that I want to ripen with only those who love my roots, for my flowers wither each winter and emerge with new hues, shapes unimaginable until they become each spring, time and time again. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share.
Thank you so much for sharing, Katarina, especially the Atlanta shooting poem. I know, I think you recited it at the AIPI rally shortly after the shooting, and it's still just as powerful as it was then. It is still today. I think it's important to address. That's, I think, another reason why we're all gathered is also in solidarity against the anti-Asian hate crimes that are still sadly occurring. So thank you for that. Our last poet of the day, we're honored to have here Meta Sarmiento. Thank you so much for coming to us and also for your network, which Katarina is a part. So we're really, really honored to have you here today. Meta is a Guam-born Filipino now based in Denver, an independent rapper and award-winning poet whose work often explores themes of cultural and political identity, masculinity, family, and love. With over a decade of experience as a writer and performer, Meta has graced a wide array of stages, from intimate basement shows to sold-out theaters across the United States and in countries like Indonesia and France. Meta is a teaching artist who has taught a variety of writing classes, having worked with over 20,000 students from middle school to university. He is a 2020 recipient of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award from the Denver Asian American Pacific Islander Commission, finalist for the 2019 North Street Book Prize, winner of multiple ciphers and rap battles, top finisher at 2018 World Underground MC Tournament, and a winner of 2015 Spoken Word for the World, where he was flown to Paris, France to perform during the United Nations climate negotiations. When Meta isn't writing, performing, or teaching ethnic studies, he's the head boxing coach at Empower Community High School in Aurora, Colorado, exploring with both staff and students what it means to have a fighting spirit. Please welcome Meta Sarmiento. Thank you, Meta.
Hey everyone, thanks Jane. So I want to say thanks to everybody for being here, to all of the amazing poets that are on the lineup today. This is dope. This is dope. What's up everyone? So my name is Meta. I'm that Filipino cat from the island on a map. I caused a ruckus in my class, settle scores with a bat. Now I'm not saying that I'm proud of all the blood on my hands, but the Goonies from the boonies taught my feet how to stand. A little older now, vision got some legs, call it hindsight. I learned you go blind just relying on your eyesight. You'll never see the path when the dust kicked up. You can't speak self-love when your heart ripped up. Cries for help too late when both wrists cut. How can you ask for any guidance when your mouth stitched shut? I tell myself, kid, even soldiers need a warm bed. Pain is like a fire. It can't eat if it's not fed. I started in the jungle, bloody knuckles with my uncles. They said it never buckle, keep that thing on a belt. I made the jump across the puddle, packed my wishes in a duffel, built a kingdom out the rubble like the church where you knelt. They told me, your 30s is confusion and pain. I say it's wisdom into action and snapping the chains that your 20s shackled on you like money and fame. Like I made it, I should quit it and just quietly fade. But I know I moved 1,009 doubts in my flame. 10 years of self-doubt, still no shaking the aim. Redefining all my victories, priorities changed. I want my happiness and peace without the pressure or shame. If you're feeling any of that, say yeah in the chat. It's always weird performing virtually, yo. I'm so not like having rocked the crowd live in over a year. But yeah, Zoom is still cool. Again, thank y'all so much for being here. Yeah, we got some folks in the chat. Positive affirmations are always good, not just for your performers, but for one another. So make sure to give that as much as you can throughout your day. All right. Wow. There's been so many amazing poems read today. I don't know if I should even read. I'm kidding. I'll read. I'm going to read this poem that it's really a combination of poems that I smashed together just because they felt right to be smashed together. And yeah, it kind of explores home and, you know, being this little island boy, leaving Guam, moving to Colorado, like it just a lot, you know what I'm saying? Just a lot. So I'm going to read this poem. I suck with titles, so it's just called poem number 1. Maybe you can help me title it. It goes like this. The first time my father rode an airplane, he was leaving the country that raised him. In Filipino, there is no word for goodbye. Only magkita tayo ulit. Let's see each other again. Only mag-ingat ka. Take care. Only wag mo kalimutan kung saan ka nagaling. Don't forget where you come from. You ask my father what America is, and he won't say colonizer. He'll say opportunity. He'll say a chance to write a new story. He says the only reason he started learning English was because after my first day of kindergarten, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to speak to me. We're separated by an ocean now. He lives in Guam with Ma. I stay in a city that gets too cold for his bones. The sun in his brown eyes hates the idea of winter. I'm too far for his patience to travel, but he's gone far enough, hasn't he? I too trained my tongue to shapeshift, swallowed the bolo knife he gave me as a kid. My heart is a master now at cutting through a jungle of flags. You ask me what America is, and I'll say a mess of things, a string of cities hanging above indigenous graves, and yet a garden that grows futures. We cut down the trees that hung strange fruit once, planted a forest of new dreams on top of the mulch. Ask Pops what America is, and he'll say, a place to rewrite our story. I tell him, it was history here before we decided to make our own. He won't say colonizer, and yet, aren't I colonized anyway? I wonder where they think home is for me. I'm not Filipino enough to be from the Philippines. I'm not Chamorro enough to be from Guam, but I've never felt like less of an American than when I finally moved to Colorado. My Uber driver asked why I spoke such perfect English. My neighbor asked if I was allowed to work in the US, and the girl down the block said, wow, you look nothing how I imagined. I'm so colonized. People imagine what I look like. They ask if the stories are true. They ask if I can split a mountain with a single breath, light stars in a hollow universe, mold life out of untouched dirt. And the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? Fuck yeah, I can. I'm so colonized, I had to preserve all my magic. I'm a third world dream shaking hope from sleepy towns. A Pacific sun pointing at the moon saying, that's the only monument oceans answer to. You should be afraid of bodies that feel no fear. I'm so colonized, being brave is the only option left. My altar is forever on fire. I learned how powerful it is to be a ghost, how to haunt someone's history and scare it into an apology. You ask me what America is, and I say, a teacher. Look what she's taught me to cope with a country that gave me citizenship, but not visibility, to honor those who fight for freedom, but be ridiculed when I question the true cost of our liberty. When I dare lay out the bodies in my bloodline like a price tag. Look how I've worked my whole life to be seen, fit enough to call this land home too. Proof that tears cannot drown the roots of a family tree. Someone proud of his beginnings and just as hopeful for his end, the one that sings the horizon into a wide, shining smile. Whew. So, yeah. So yeah, again, that poem is just a hodgepodge of different poems smashed together. And, as somebody who like, a lot of people consider Filipinos Asian, but I also grew up in literally a Pacific island, right? So it's like a mess, just a mess of things. And I'm always exploring that mess and what kind of strengths can I draw from that mess. And I think it's important. A lot of kids like me do that. Speaking of kids, I work in a high school called Empower Community High School in Aurora, Colorado. It's the type of high school I wish I went to. I currently teach ethnic studies there, which is a gnarly ride trying to teach ethnic studies to a bunch of high school kids. And one of the things that I try to explore, especially with a lot of our, young boys, especially of color, is this idea of masculinity, right? Like, yo, what does it mean to be a man, especially a man of color? So I often explore that for myself. And I guess I wanted to close out with a piece around that. So again, I suck at titles. This one's just called Ritual of Manhood in 3 parts. All right, Ritual of Manhood in 3 parts. 1, what is a ritual but a performance? And what is manhood but a boy's childhood bowing against the stage lights? Do you know how hot temper gets? Do you know that between gunpowder and the hammer, there's a spark that burns at 300 degrees, the same temperature that rises flour, the same heat that bakes a smile into the family table? You see a gang and not the ceremony involved in the brotherhood. What is an initiation but a ritual? Do you know why we call it getting jumped? Because after the fist and feet, you hop around to cover up how hurt you are. You hold tears in because crying now could mean something worse than knuckles or heels. When you're in, you can't say no to anything without getting beat for the refusal. I was an alcoholic before I hit puberty. I learned the difference between liquor and gin before my first kiss. Do you know why we have to break before we're accepted? Because no sacrifice with perfect bones ever earned power. Because the world is a war and a boy is a kill until he is the killer. My OG told me to take care of his light work once. Said, the Mark's a middle school kid. He put the bat in my hand. Might get life if the kid never makes it home, but me, I'd be fine in juvie, right? Aggression with no compass is aggravated assault. Some boys fight so long to rise, end up becoming a morning star instead. Hasn't blood always been proof of loyalty? How many times has my body been a proud flag? 2, I was standing next to my OG the night he was shot in a drive-by. It's interesting how the flash of a gun either buries a dream or calls it back from the darkness. When a bullet spills an ocean of blood, you remember how fragile a man can be. I remembered I was not yet a man. just a boy performing for the boys, performing for all the boys, performing for all the boys. And isn't that the cycle? Boys pretend to be men by forcing other boys to pretend to be men and mistake the drowning as growing up. Misguided youth point misguided youth down tracks and mistake the train wreck as love. 3, do we offer ritual because something is sacred? Or does something become sacred because of the ritual offered? Is it vain to kneel in front of my mirror, catch the ocean from my eyes, wash the blood on my hands into a blessing? Let the quiver in my voice shake demons into divinity. Can a man be divine? Can he be soft like dirt without being buried first? Can he be tough like nails without the coffin? Can he be both, the flower and stone, the flame and song, the eclipse to remind us breathing is a dance of light and dark, a joyous occasion, a reason to marvel? And I think that's the last poem I got, y'all. Thanks so much for allowing me to share amongst all these amazing poets.
Thank you so much, amazing poets. I mean, I'm floored. I think, I mostly work with visual artists, and I know that people, seeing the exhibition has been really fulfilling to see art again, in person during this crazy year. But I can't tell you how much your poems have really filled me personally, and I'm sure everyone here in this room. I mean, it's so powerful to hear poetry even in this virtual universe. I can't thank you enough. I think I want to share this recording with everyone I know. It's just so powerful, your collective voices. And I hope in the chat you can all just put where to find you. I'm sure you'll have a lot more fans after this who will want to be able to reach out to you. Again, I know that Jeffrey, Sandy, and Serena are part of the Colorado Poet Center, and you can find their bios and information on that website. Katarina and Meta, I know you have your own websites. But yes, I look forward to hearing more from you all. And if there's any questions you guys have that are appropriate for the whole group, now's your chance. We'll look in the chat for any questions. My question would be, when can we do this again? This is really, I mean, yeah, a great collaboration. So thank you to Artworks for giving us this platform. If you haven't seen the exhibition yet and you're in Colorado, please come see it. It's up through the end of the month. It'll close on the 29th of May. You can also see it online. All the artwork is for sale. So we really want to support our fellow AAPI artists. And again, thank you all for joining us today. I'm leaving with just this really renewed sense of hope and I think just solidarity amongst Asian Americans. I couldn't be more proud today. So thank you.
Since there aren't any questions, I'd love everyone to unmute and give the poets today a round of applause, please.
Thank you, Sarah. I think we'll have the recording up on the website soon. Is that true? Yeah, okay. So you guys can share with anyone who couldn't make it today. I guess that's a wrap. Thank you so much. I'm just in awe of all of you, so thank you.